channel. Today I'll be sharing 3 farmhouse kitchen decor DIYs that are all really easy to do, and they were super inexpensive for me to make as well. I finally got around to making my own tiered tray, and I'm really excited for you guys to see that, as well as the other 2 projects in today's video. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends and family. It really helps out my channel. Now let's get right into today's projects. For the first DIY, I'm making a bakery wall sign, and for this project I started out by painting 3 24-inch by 3.5-inch by 1/4 inch thick pieces of wood with my Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster, and I did 2 coats of paint on all 3 pieces of wood. Once that plaster color was all dry, I then went in with my folk art chalk paint in the color Java and my Dollar Tree stencil brush, and I dry brushed that color around all of the edges of all 3 pieces of wood. Next, I'm using my Craftsmart wood stain in the color brown to stain 2 pieces of wood that are 11.5 by 1.5 by 3/8 inch thick, and I only did 1 coat of the stain on both of these pieces of wood. While my stain was drying, I then moved on and started painting all of the letters that I'm going to be using on my sign. And the letters I'm using are spelling out the word bakery, and I picked these ones up from Michael's, and they are 5 inches. And the paint that I'm using is the folk art chalk paint in the color rich black, and I painted all of my letters just with 1 coat of that paint. After the paint was dry on the letters, I then went in with some sandpaper and sanded around all of the edges and a little bit on the front of each letter. Next, I'm taking all 3 pieces of wood that I've painted with my plaster color chalk paint, and I'm just aligning them up so that I can have them all nice and straight before I start attaching everything together. To ensure that all 3 pieces of my plastered colored wood are going to stick together, I'm using a scrap piece of wood that I had in my stash, and I placed hot glue along the back side of that, and then just place that on one side in the center of my 3 pieces of plastered colored wood, and then I did the same thing with another scrap piece of wood for the other side. Next, I'm taking some more hot glue and running it along the top edge of my sign. Once I have the glue all on, I'm then taking one of my stained 24-inch by 3.5-inch pieces of wood and just pressing that over top of the hot glue to attach it. Then for the side piece on my sign, I'm doing one of the 11.5 by 1.5-inch pieces of wood, and then continuing those same steps for the other 2 sides of my sign. I like to use hot glue to attach all of my wood pieces together first before I go in and start nailing all of my wood together. This just helps the wood stay in place for when I'm nailing all of my nails in. For the sides of my sign, I used 3 nails going along each side. You could always use a wood glue if you'd like, or a stronger industrial glue, but I feel that the hot glue and the nails have worked just fine for me and other signs that I've made in the past. And for the smaller sides of my sign, I nailed in 3 nails as well. Now that I have the base of my sign all put together, I'm then taking my letters that spell out the word bakery, and I'm just setting them down on the front of my sign for how I want them to be when I start gluing them down. I then took hot glue, placed it along the back of each letter, and then just pressed the letter back into place to attach it to my sign. Here is the bakery sign all finished. This could be a great statement piece for your kitchen. It was super easy to make, and even better, it was really inexpensive as well. Now moving into DIY number 2, I'm making a farmhouse kitchen sign. For this one, I first started out by painting a 12.5 by 5.5 by 3/8 thick piece of wood with my folk art chalk paint in the color Persian gray. I did 2 different coats of paint on this piece of wood. Once the paint was completely dry, I then went in with my Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster and a chip brush, and I dry brushed this color on my entire piece of wood. And I did use a good amount of paint on my chip brush, as you can see here. I wanted this piece of wood to look really rustic and have a lot of like worn paint on it, so that's why I'm using a little bit more paint than I normally would. After I had my wood piece all painted, I then moved on and started painting this spoon that I picked up from Dollar Tree. I wish I would have had some spray paint for this, but I just used what I had, and what I had was the Waverly paint in the color plaster, so I just painted that on with a paintbrush, and I did have to do 3 different coats of paint to get it covered up really nicely. Once the paint was all dry on my spoon, I then took the stencil that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. It has a rooster, a cow, and a pig on it. I'm just using the rooster that's on the top part of this stencil. I placed it in the center of my spoon, and I'm using my Folk Art chalk paint in the color Rich Black on a Dollar Tree stencil brush, and I'm painting right over top of that rooster. And since I really couldn't tape the stencil down, I'm just holding it into place as I go along the stencil. After the rooster was all painted on, I then pulled off the stencil. I then placed my spoon and the bottom portion of my piece of wood right in the center, and then I used some hot glue on the wood to attach my spoon. Next, I'm using these stamps that I picked up from Michael's. I'm using all capital letters, and I'm stamping on the words Farmhouse Kitchen right above my spoon. Then I'm using some of this black and white buffalo check ribbon from Hobby Lobby. I'm cutting it down to size, and I'm having it wrapped around the front of my sign under the words Farmhouse Kitchen. I'm then hot gluing the two ends of the ribbon along the back side of my wood. For the last step, I'm taking some more of that rich black chalk paint on a very small paintbrush, and I'm painting that around all of the edges of my spoon. Here is my Farmhouse Kitchen sign all finished. I think it turned out super cute. My stamped letters that say Farmhouse Kitchen are not perfect, but I think it adds a little bit more of a rustic feel with them being a little imperfect. Now moving on for the last DIY today, I'm making a tiered tray. For this one, I started by spray painting these two pans that I picked up from Dollar Tree with my Rust-Oleum spray paint in the color Oil Rubbed Bronze. I did 2 coats of this paint on the front side of the pans and then also on the back side of the pans. After the Rust-Oleum paint was all dry, I then took my Waverly paint in the color Plaster on a chip brush, and I started dry brushing that over top of my entire pan. I focused most of the paint around all of the edges of the pan, and then I took whatever was left over on my brush and then just dry brushed that on the rest of the pan. I did those same steps on the back side of the pan, and then also the exact same steps on the second pan as well. Next, I'm using some of these unfinished candlesticks that I picked up from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just using some scissors to pop out the metal pieces that are on the top of the candlesticks. I then went in with my Waverly paint in the color Plaster, and I painted 2 coats of paint on both candlesticks. I also painted one of these mini wooden finials that came in a pack from Walmart, and I'm using that same Waverly paint in Plaster. Now it's time to assemble everything. I'm placing hot glue on the bottom of one of my candlesticks and then just placing it right in the center of my bottom pan, which is a little bit bigger than the top pan. I'm then placing more hot glue on the top of the candlestick and then placing my second pan on top of that, and I'm just making sure that it's centered before I place it down on top of my glue. I'm then using some more hot glue on the top of my second candlestick, and then I'm placing that in the center of my second pan. You definitely want to make sure that this is centered before pressing it down. I'm then taking some more glue, placing it on the bottom part of my finial, and then attaching that to the top of my second candlestick. You could leave the candlesticks just painted white, but I wanted to add a little bit more of a rustic feel to them, so I'm taking my rich black chalk paint from Folk Art on a really small paintbrush, and then I'm painting that color around all of the areas of the candlesticks that have grooves to them, and I think it added a really nice rustic feel to them, and I was really messy when painting this color on. I then took some more of my Waverly paint in Plaster on a chip brush, and I was just going to add a little bit of like distressing to the black that I painted around the candlesticks, but the paint wasn't all the way dry, so of course when I was painting the white over the black, it ended up making more of like a gray color. You can kind of see it here, and instead of stopping, I just decided to go with it. So I made kind of like a gray color with the white and the black and just distressed the rest of the candlesticks. Here is my tiered tray all finished. This is what it looks like without any of the decor that I decorated it with, and I think it looks really cute. If you wanted to use more of an industrial type glue, you could always use like an E6000 instead of the hot glue that I used. This is what it looks like with all of my decor that I placed on it, and I think it is so cute, and I don't know why I waited so long to make a tiered tray, but I'm so happy that I finally got around to doing it. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps out my channel. I would love to hear in the comments down below which DIY from today's video was your favorite. If you're not subscribed, I hope that you will consider subscribing. Please be sure to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Thank you so much for watching.